Hello traders, and welcome to our weekly watch list for the first week of July. I'm going to be covering a bunch of pairs that I think are setting up some opportunities for us this week, and we'll get to those in a sec. Obviously I've written extensively about the euro this morning, so I'm not going to comment too much more on that. You can see that it's already making its way down. We're only sort of 30 pips away from our first level and about 100 pips away from where I think the buyers will really step in, so be watching that one quite closely. But let's get to it. Let's look at the other markets that I think are going to provide some more opportunity for us. So the first market that I'd like to have a chat about is the yen. Now the yen is looking really interesting. You can see this buying that started in around about in the middle of June, apologies. So I've got the daily chart up here, and you can see what happened. We had this sort of wick down here, and then the buyers really stepped in. And let me zoom in a bit more. If you have a look at these charts and you have a look at the candles in particular, the bullish candles are really strong. Look how big they are. Look where the closes are, right up near the high, okay? And they actually move price. I don't know, maybe that sounds a bit silly, but contrast that with the bearish candles. So look at this sequence in particular. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 candles over here. They've got a lot of wick on both sides, closes are near the middle, right? And price doesn't really go anywhere. We've got 4 days of trade here and a 24 pip retrace, and you can see with just one single day here of 60-70 pips that completely wiped out all that price action. Now this structure that you're seeing here is very bullish, and you can see our price rushed up against this what was then resistance at about 112. You can see our 112. You can see our price pushed up against that level. It's since blasted right through there, retested it a couple of times, and looks to be continuing to the upside. So this still looks pretty bullish to me. This structure is a very strong trending structure. The challenge, of course, is that if you back the chart up, you would have to say that we really are in more of a prolonged consolidation. The only time I would consider a long trade on the daily time frame, at least, is when we break above this 114 sort of 30 area here. So in other words, when we start trading above this high. So does that give us any opportunity on the lower time frame? And I think it might. If you switch to the 4-hour chart, you can see we're challenging this high from last week. We've almost breached that high. We're going to see what happens there. I think we will pick up a little bit of selling, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a minor retrace on the 4-hour time frame. Perhaps if I were to mark the level, perhaps to sort of this space over here. So I've got that around about these highs, and if you'd like the number specifically, that's about 112.40. And I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a bit of a retrace there and an opportunity to buy and go long and jump in on that train. So that's one that I'm going to be watching. Let's see if we get the trade we will be watching. Right, let's move on to our next market. This is the pound. Now this is also really interesting. You can see I've got a lot of support and resistance drawn in, and it's been quite a choppy pair to trade. Obviously we rushed up to this 130 level last week. You can see we really pushed quite strongly into it, and we're seeing a bit of a pause here. I think this looks really bullish. I'm not ready to short the pound at this stage. I don't think there's much sense in that. I want to see if other sellers are going to jump in first, certainly before I do. I think we're much more likely to see a bit of a retrace, a bit of a pause at this level, and a push through. So that's a market that I'm going to be watching quite closely. We don't have it set up there just yet, but I think certainly one on the move and one to watch. So not too much more to sort of cover on that piece. The Swissy is another one that I was having a look at. So if you switch to the weekly time frame, and I know it seems to be quite a bit to take in. So if you switch again to a line chart, you can see that we've got this level. I've got it drawn at about 0.9597. So the reality is that's 0.96, isn't it? Especially on a weekly time frame. And you can see these kind of bends in the chart, and each one of these bends counts as a vote for an important zone of support and resistance. Now, if we go back to the daily time frame, and we can go back to our candlestick charts at the same time, you can see our price bounced off this level, came back up, and has since broken below the level and is retesting it again. We may get a trade at this price, and I think that would sort of happen on the 4-hour. And the zone itself, let me draw it in here. I guess the zone itself is sort of anywhere from this level all the way up to sort of up to here, which is not too much higher. You can see it's a zone, it's not a specific price point, and that really is how support and resistance works. So it's only sort of 20 pips higher, and I think a move back up here, a retest of this level, some sort of bearish candle sets us up for a really nice short. And our first target would be down here at about 95.50, where price managed to sort of turn around late last week. So we're going to be watching that one quite closely too. I quite like it. I think it has a lot of potential. Again, not quite there yet, but a very nice looking pair. The Kiwi. Now, I wrote about this one last week And I was saying this looks really, really bullish to me. I still think it looks very, very bullish. If you switch to the daily chart, you can sort of see what's happening here. So price is pushed up against this level. It did not close higher than the 0.7343. So I'm still not looking for a long trade. I want to see price closing above the wick of this pin bar. Okay, and that hasn't happened yet, so I'm not long. If you switch to a lower time frame, you can sort of see what's happening. We may be seeing price squeezing up here with some sort of rising trend line and a level of horizontal resistance, and one would expect that to eventually pop higher for the long. So I'm still bullish. I'm still waiting for the trade. I still like it a lot. Again, if you switch to the weekly time frame, I think our targets up here at 0.77 are still potentially on the card. So let's watch it. All right, we don't have a trade there. You know, a couple of bearish days here don't mean too much to me. It could certainly just be a little bit of profit taking. So let's see what happens. The Euro Pound Weekly. So I bring this one up not because it's one of my favorite pairs to trade, but a couple of members asked me to just have a quick look at it. And what I want to do here is just switch to the line chart, all right, and discuss, I guess, the more important thing here, which I think is the support and resistance. Now, I've got a level drawn here at 0.8730, let's call it. You can see it captures that high. It sort of captures that high. You know, certainly if you look at the closing prices, you'd say that it does. It captures these highs, it captures these highs. And if you switch to the weekly chart, and we're looking at a weekly chart here in particular, and we go back to the candlestick chart, are we looking at some sort of reversal? In other words, if I were to draw a zone up here at 88.40, are we saying price is wicked higher and it is about to reverse? My opinion is no. All right, and the reason for that is that I think price is now trading above the important zone. I don't think the important zone is up here by this high or even at these highs. I think the more important level, and let's get rid of those because they can be a little confusing if they're in the wrong place, but I think the more important level is shown by all of these highs over here. And this for me is more of some sort of blow off top. I still think that level was respecting this 87.30. So for me, price is above the important zone of support and resistance. And until it starts closing below that zone, I would still look at this in a bullish fashion. So if you switch to the daily chart, you know, it perhaps becomes a little bit more clear. You can see price respecting that level again here. Isn't this more of a sort of a blow off top in it? And it looks to me like price has really pushed through this level here and is trading above that zone. So I would still think we're going to see more upside before any sort of potential reversal. So no reversal on that for me. Another market I wrote about last week that I was very interested in, this is the EURCAD. I said this is, I think, the first sort of euro pair that is turning around, and we're certainly seeing that. It seems, you know, we've got this price is broken down, we've got this channel here, and it appears to be closing below the channel. Now, I'm going to wait probably for some sort of 4-hour trade or potentially on the daily. I'm not too interested in rushing into this. You know, we tend to see a lot of sort of false moves early on in the week. You know, when then price sort of the wicks of the week form on sort of the first trading session of the week. So that could be the case here. I'm not entirely sure. I think price is still going to move lower. But what I'd like to see is price to spend a little bit of time down here, come back up and retest this channel from below. And I think then we have a very, very good opportunity to short with our first sort of level of support all the way down here. All right, that would be sort of where my first target is, and you can see why, right? There's not too much support in the way, especially sort of recently. You can see there really isn't a reason to hold the bears up if they take charge here. So this one, I wrote about it last week. It's still right up in the sort of top of my watch list, probably my favorite pair to trade right now. Let's give it a little bit of time. Always a couple of sessions to start the week out and see how price behaves is always extremely valuable in avoiding losers. Then just very briefly, the euro yen, and we'll have a quick look at the CAD yen, similar obviously to the euro, with the yen, the dollar yen looking bullish. The euro yen is also looking quite bullish. I'd like to see a retrace though, ideally down to this 125.70. All right, that matches these highs here. I'd like to see some sort of retrace before I go long. It may not feel like that's possible at this stage, but give it a chance. All right, give it a chance. And similar to the CAD yen, same kind of thing here, right? We've just seen these absolutely bullish moves. They look fantastic. I'd I'd like to see price come back down to about 85 on the CAD yen. So it's almost 200 pips away. I'd like to see it come back down here, some sort of bounce off these levels, and again an opportunity to go along. So I think on these yen pairs the bulls are certainly in control, but I'd like to see some sort of retrace before I put any money behind it. So those are the pairs that I'm interested in at the start of the week, and we will certainly have a look as the week progresses if there are any more that we're going to add to that list. Happy trading.